Cool. Welcome to another Lonely Viking tutorial slash walkthrough. And today we're going to be doing Adobe XD. And I think we're going to do this one in probably like 2 or 3 different sessions. And so the reason behind this is my business partner Martin is starting to get involved in doing stuff in Adobe XD because we're getting a lot more work for front-end design and development, and so he's jumping into that. But being a developer for most of his life, he doesn't really know how to get around Adobe XD or design programs too much for that matter. And so I'm going to run through Adobe XD with him and look at sort of some of the concepts, some of the ways that the app works, and probably a few design concepts or ideas here and there along the way, although this is not a design tutorial. But so let's jump into that. I got Martin on a call with me, and I'm filming my screen and myself with the webcam, and him filming himself with the webcam, so hopefully not too many glitches and hitches, but let's go for it. Okay, so when you open up XD, you're going to see this screen over here, and basically this has got like recent projects down in the bottom over here, and at the top it's got different artboard sizes, and we'll have a look at what artboards are in a minute. But basically here's where you're already going to know what project you're working on. Is it a web app, is it a mobile phone app, and then like what we're going to do for the purposes of this is do a desktop website. But because websites need to be responsive, you're going to then decide, am I designing the mobile layout first and then expanding it to desktop? For the purposes of this, we're going to just click here on this web full HD 1920 by 1081. So just click on there. That's going to open up. And so the very first thing that I'll do when I start a new project is to save that project. So I'm going to call this and by the way, we're using a brand, a fictional brand that I designed and developed for a talk that I was doing on an online summit about branding. And so we're just going to use that Campfire Craft Brews. So
that should totally be a brand that exists though. I mean, let's start a brewery just so we can use this brand.
Yeah, because we're not doing enough stuff already, right? Let's start a brewery.
Let's just do it, man.
But I would love to. Okay, so gonna give it a name and then just save it on my computer. Okay, I already did start one like that, so I'm just gonna give it a very original name with a 2. Okay, so now we've got our project saved. Let's have a quick overview of what's happening inside of XD. You'll see in the very top left over here we've got design, prototype and share, and these are the 3 sort of environments that you work in. For right now we're just going to look at design. Prototyping is where you can actually flow from one screen to the next, and then you can share those prototypes and designs with your clients, but we'll get to those in another lesson, I think. This tool that is in the very far left toolbar, this tool that's selected at the top is the selection tool. That's like the one that you'll have active most of the time. There's some shape tools here, and this is the Artboard tool, which is quite important. As you can see, when you click the Artboard tool on the far right hand side, it brings up all of these different artboard sizes that you can have. On the just to the right of the main toolbar here, we've got our artboards. So if I click on that, you'll see, since we've only got one, there's one there, and it has highlighted it. And if we add more, it will add them under here. So I usually go and rename this and I'll call it whatever it's actually going to be. Okay, so that's just the basic rundown. You'll see how to create and duplicate artboards in a second. On the bottom end of this toolbar, you'll see we've got this little layers icon highlighted at the moment, and that is for this that's going to show us our artboards and then our groups and layers, which I'll show you a little bit later. Just above that is this one where we're going to get started, and that is an assets panel. And so for me, the most important part of a project in XD is to, even though it's a bit boring in the beginning, is to set up all the assets and so that you can use them going throughout the project. So for me, a very good structure up front is super important. So I think it'll be good if we run through that.
Yeah.
So the first thing for me usually is I would get our corporate colors or whatever, the brand colors for whatever it is that we're working on. So I've got those here in an Illustrator file for the logo design. And also what I do have for this is a brand guide. So let me just go back to the beginning of this brand guide. And so if we've gotten this from our client, or if we've designed this for our client, then we're going to have this open when we get started. And so yeah, on page 10 is where we got our colors. Actually no, that's logo usage. So there we go, brand colors. And so this is not I can't copy the text from here, so I'll go and do this in Illustrator. What Adobe has across their products, but not in XD as far as I've seen, maybe someone can tell me otherwise, is these things called libraries. So you see here I've got a campfire library and I've got these colors in here. So I'm just going to double click that, copy the hex value, go back to XD. You can't add assets unless you add them from something that's existing. So I'm going to get this shape tool, make a little square, and now this panel on the right is all of the attributes of the object that we've got selected. Right, we've got these alignment tools up at the top, which we'll have a look at a bit later. Here's the size of the thing, and you can lock that size together with that little lock icon. So if I change this to 200 now, the other one will also. So that's how you keep stuff in proportion. Here is the position where it is on the artboard. So if I call that 0, it's going to go right to the far left.
Okay.
And then...
And what are those metrics, Shane? Are those pixel metrics or?
Yeah, so because XD is a web design tool essentially, or like a not necessarily just web, but mobile apps and stuff. It's all based on pixels.
Sure.
So yeah, and then some blend modes and stuff, which we won't get into now. This over here you can see is the border radius, and so if you've got HTML and CSS and like JavaScript or coding experience, that helps a lot actually when designing in this. So often designers who've designed for print and not for web, they will struggle in a tool like XD, because you've got to know design, but you've also got to know how stuff translates onto the web.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is our border radius over here. You'll see if I give this, let's say like 100, it might make that into a circle, sure. And if I want to separate those, I click on there, and then I could make one of these to be 10 and make little thing like that. For now, we're just going to leave it at 0. Here's the full color, so you can change the color of that thing. And here's the border color. If I deselect that, now you can't really see because of the colors I've selected, but if I make that white again, see it's got a border, so you can just deselect that if you don't want it to have one. And here's what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna go to fill, I'm gonna paste the hex value I got from Illustrator, and then I'm going to hit enter, and you see there's a little plus sign at the bottom of this color selector thing. I usually add the color there with each color that I use. And
cool. So then you can refer to it at a later stage, like it becomes like a palette that you can refer to.
Yeah, exactly. So
Cool.
although we're going to have the colors here in our assets panel on the left, sometimes you just want to change the color of one thing and your assets panel is closed because you're in another one. You can just select from those colors at the bottom there.
Cool.
Okay, so we're starting to make our color assets, and you'll see here these plus signs are grayed out in the assets panel. As soon as I click this shape, the components plus sign and the colors one, they become active. So I can now add a color there. So if I click plus, it's going to add my color, and by default it's named with the hex value, but I like to give it a more human readable name that's like project based. If you do need the hex value, there's a couple of ways you can do that. You could select this, go to the fill, and you'll see it there. The other way is to select this, or just go to the asset, right click on it, you can copy the hex value over there.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay, and then another cool thing in this right click menu is, let's say I have this shape all over my project, or this color. So if I hold Alt or Option and drag, it's how I can duplicate objects. And let's say I've got this thing, all different things all over my project, but they're that color. I can right click here and say highlight on canvas, and in every single one of my artboards it's going to highlight everything that's got that color assigned to it. So
very cool.
If I want to make global changes, it makes it really easy. So if I right click and say edit, I can then edit this, and every instance of that color is going to change to whatever I make it.
Very cool.
So that's why I like to add these things right at the beginning, is because one is to like manage your project as globally as possible. So anyway, I'd go do this one by one. It can be a bit boring, but tedious, but copy the colors, paste it there, add it, and then go and add it to my components or my colors. And you'll see, like, if you get projects from other people, often this thing's never named in ways that you can understand. So like it would just have the hex values there, which is okay, I guess, but it's much nicer for the project, and especially if you get the file or give the file to someone else, for it to be human readable and understandable.
Even like referring to the names, if you're having a discussion, you can say, why don't we change campfire red? Then everybody knows which red you're talking about, because some projects might have 2 or 3 different reds, you know?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so I'm not going to go make every single color now, because it'll make this too long, because you get how that works now. Okay.
Yeah,
so then I would move on to character styles, and don't forget to save. I know you know this, but for people watching, Command or Control S every few minutes.
You got that
Otherwise,
twitch, the command is twitch.
Yeah, it's natural, it just happens. Okay, so like I said earlier, if we have a brand guide, which hopefully we do, then we use that brand guide for things like typography and stuff. So if I go to page 14, I guess we're on typography. And now what I did on this project was I used the font that I don't think has a web font version of it. And I think if I redid this, I might rethink this font. I think it fits very nicely with the brand, but it doesn't translate to web very well. So I'm going to replace this font with an alternative. The secondary font is Montserrat, which is a Google font. So that's easy. So anyway, if you've got this guide, you're going to go see the different sizes inside of the typography's hierarchy, and then make headings and stuff based on that. So if you hit T, you'll get the text tool, and I'm just going to type H1 heading, and if you press escape, it deselects it and changes to the it actually doesn't change to the selection tool, but it deselects the text so that you don't keep typing. Okay, so I'm gonna make this text our campfire navy, and then I'm gonna change this font to Playfair display. I'm gonna make this like 45, and now this would ordinarily be based on these values, right, if you've got the guide. And I'm going to make this bold, and I think it was uppercase there, so I'm going to hit uppercase over here, and make sure it's left aligned, because text generally is going to be left aligned for English. Okay, and then now that we've got the attributes of the heading selected, we go here to character styles and click the plus. Awesome. And then I like to again give this like an understandable name, so H1, and then I like to leave that in there so I can see what the font name is and how big it is. So that's an H1. Would then go here, copy it, and I can then go and change these settings. So let's call this 38.
So you want to create heading 2 now.
And let's remove, yeah. So I'm gonna remove the uppercase, and then I can go back to my character styles, and I'm gonna call that H2. And then we build up a library of character styles. The next one I would do is body text, and that one based on the guide is going to be Montserrat. And let's see what it says in there. It's going to say, we got it here, body text 15 pixels regular. So I'm going to call this regular, where is it, 15, and I'm going to actually make it this, if we go back to Illustrator here, I have this color here, this like dark gray with a little tiny bit of blue in. I'm going to copy that value, I'm going to make this text that color, and I'm going to hit the plus sign there. Okay.
Add it to your color assets as well. Surely if you click plus right now, it'll add it to the color assets, right?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Okay, cool. So it'll be, oh, why is it not? Okay, for some reason that's not allowing me to rename it. Oh, there we go. Okay, I like to keep these in order. And then, okay, I got my body text. It's that that color, it's 15, it's regular, it's left aligned. So once I've got that, I can go here again, add another character style, all that, body. Okay, and I'm gonna just call it there, but obviously we can have lots of these. We can have menu items, we can have footer text, we can have all kinds of different things here, whatever we're going to be using. But I think we don't want this to be too long.
Oh, that's cool.
That's another cool thing. Check out these things, the distance between them. So if I'm moving this, you see that number changes there, that little pink bar, which is very important for web design, because a lot of, if not all, web stuff is grid based, and the distancing between things is very important. So you see there, I made that 20.
Yeah.
Now if I drag something else near that stuff, it's going to tell me, okay, those are all 20 apart.
Awesome. Okay.
So if I was doing like columns or rows or something, that starts to get very important.
Yeah.
One other thing while we're here quickly, if you hover on the side of an artboard, you'll see that little cursor changes, and that's for something called a guide. So let's say I wanted to have 50 pixel padding on the side of my page. If I had like a full width or something, then I could move that to 50. If my mouse wasn't so sensitive, you can change it manually though. And then same goes for the top. So I can have the guides like that, and then if I wanted one in the center, it should be at 960. Yeah. So you can split up and make columns and stuff like that.
Cool.
You can also go and view, if you want to hide the guides, you can do that. The keyboard shortcut for that is Control and semicolon, or Command semicolon. And then you can also show a layout grid. So that's like your standard 12 columns like you would have in a like Bootstrap layout or something,
Cool.
You can show these tiny little squares if you want to.
Okay.
So yeah, where you position stuff is very important. So that's why it's got all of those tools. Okay, so we got our colors and fonts. The next thing is components, and components are really, really cool. I'm just going to zoom in. If you want to zoom, Control or Command and then the minus and plus keys work for that. And
Cool.
Also, if you press Z or Z on your keyboard, there's a zoom tool. You can actually drag to zoom in, and if you hold Alt or Option, you can click and zoom out.
Okay.
Cool. And if you want to view what the actual size of this thing would be, you go to View, Menu Bar, and you click on 100, which can be helpful sometimes if you want to see like the size of what a button's going to be or whatever.
Sure.
So let's do that. Let's make a button, okay? And we'll make it a component, and then I'll show you why that's so cool. So I'm going to select this rectangle tool, and I'm going to create just like, let's say like a call to action button. And that by default is white with a gray border. I'm going to take the border off. I'm going to make this our campfire red. And this is going to be like our default call to action button for our project or our app or whatever it is. So let's say we want that, if we wanted that to be one of those like pill shaped buttons, we would give that like a border of 50 and we'd get that. For this, I'm just going to go for like 5 pixels. Okay, and then what we're going to do here is, to move your screen around is the space bar, and then click and drag. And I'm going to put some text inside here. You can see there are generally like little guides that come up to show me where the center of certain things are or whatever. Okay,
That's cool.
so if I click there, and here's my text alignment. I'm going to center align that so that it stays in the middle, and I'm going to type CTA button, and then you can see that that's not aligned vertically. So the way we can do that is select the shape and the text, and then these alignment buttons here, we can make sure it's aligned to the center.
Do you hold command when you select two things? Is that how you do it?
Yeah. So you can drag over multiple things.
Okay.
And then if you click and hold, actually you would hold shift, I think. Yeah. If you're selecting more than one thing in these panels, you can hold command, like, so that you don't select only the ones that are next to each other, But
Sure.
Inside of this window, you got to hold shift. So yeah, then we align those, and then I'm going to change this text to, let's say, 18 pixels. I'm going to make it like semi-bold, and make it white. And there's our button, but what we've got now is a shape and some text. We don't have a button, so we want this thing to be a button. So before I make this into a component, I think I'll show you the layers panel, because that'll be a good way to show what's happening here.
Okay.
So right now we're in our assets panel, and if you look at the bottom left of the toolbar, that's the assets panel that's highlighted. Below that is a layers panel, so we click on that. At the top here you can see this is our if I hover over, it did come up for a bit, there we go, that's our Campfire homepage desktop artboard, and then these are all the layers and objects and stuff inside of that artboard. So if I click back here, there's our artboard, and then this pasteboard is anything that's not on an artboard. So you can see here there's a little letter C, which I put there by mistake, obviously. So if I delete that, now the pasteboard's gone away.
Cool.
For the artboard, you can double click to rename it there, you can double click to rename it there, you can hold the name and drag to move artboards, and if you double click this little icon over here, it's going to go into the artboard. You see it's highlighted it, and now we've got our layers and stuff. Okay. So what I would do usually is, if I've created this button, you see there it's got rectangle 1, that's just this red rectangle, and then there's our CTA button text, but I want that to be a button. First thing is I always want to rename things so that they are understandable to a human if I give this file to them. So instead of calling that rectangle 1, because the next rectangle I draw is going to be rectangle 2, and if I copy this one, it's going to be called rectangle 1 copy, and then the file just gets super messy. So that's why this part of the project for me is super important. Create all the assets, and then as you go, make sure everything is well named and well structured. So I'm going to call this CTA button BG. Your naming convention might be different. So now I've got my button background and my button text, and you see if I select the two of them and I press Command or Control G, it's going to group them. So now if I move them, they're a group. So we're one step closer to creating a button. So that's nice. But you can see here it's made a folder called Group 1, and I'm going to call that CTA button. And if I drill down that folder, it's going to have my assets inside of it. Now what I want to do is I can right click either here or over here, and I'm going to say make component, and then you see that it's gone green around there.
Sure.
Instead of blue. So it's now a component, and it's got this little diamond symbol in the top left corner, and it's changed my folder group into a component, and you can see it's got that little diamond shape over there. Cool. Now if we go back to our assets panel, you'll see it has created this component, and it even gave it the name CTA button, because my group was named CTA button when I made the component.
Sure.
So that's quite nice. So now anytime I want a call to action button, I can drag it out from there.
Cool.
And so let me show you what's great also about these components. So I've got two instances of this component. So now if I click on this one, you can see the little diamond icon in the top left is filled, and over here it's hollow. So that's telling me this is a parent component, or what's called a master component inside of XD, and this is a child because it's got the hollow thing over there. If I go back to my layers panel, you'll see the parent has a thick border around it, and the child, the parent has nothing around it, and the child has that thick border around it.
Okay.
And now what's cool is I can change stuff on the child. Like I can call this bar now, and it changes only the child, that instance of it. And then once you've changed a child and it's got an attribute that's different to the parent, it gets this little dot inside the diamond shape there. You can see over here in the layers panel as well.
Yeah.
And you can open that like a folder, and you can edit the different parts of that. So what's cool about that is the child is based on the parent, but it can be changed. So if I want to change that color, I can make that a blue one.
Cool.
However, if I want to change every instance of every child, I can go here and edit the master. If I don't know where the master is, I can select any child, right click and say edit master component. It will move my screen to that master and it will select it for me. Now I can double click inside there, or if you're in your layers panel, you can just drill down like that. And now if I change my button, you can see I've got the button background selected. If I change the color of it, it's going to change every child instance of that button.
Very cool.
So that's how components work, and they can get quite complex if you really want them to be. So like you could have a whole hero section and save it as a component, or something like that. But I think components are great, and so they're here as part of the assets panel. Just quickly, I think we can probably call it a lesson here at this point. Maybe you have some questions to ask, but if you want to add an artboard, last thing, click on you can either, let's say we want to make like an about page now. I think you can alt drag to copy.
Cool.
Or if we wanted to like now make a mobile layout of this, for example, you click the Artboard tool in the left here, and first deselect everything, click on the Artboard tool, and then here are all of these artboards that we could use. So let's take an iPhone 6, 7 and 8, and that's just created my artboard there. And now if you want to rename it, as you know, you can double click there, rename.
Very cool.
So that's how artboards work. And then so I think key takeaways from this, maybe a little bit boring to set up in the beginning, but global assets for the project are very important. Creating components that are reusable so that global changes can be made. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I guess there's two things really. The first one being, you've now used different objects, can I call them, to create your assets, right? So you've created, take different heading texts, and in the beginning you created those little circles or blocks to give colors. And I see that you've removed them. So once you've gone through this whole practice, you can delete everything you've done to set up your workspace, if you like. You can delete it all, but all your assets will remain in place. Is that right? Okay, cool.
Exactly, yeah. There you can see I deleted everything. and with these guides you can get rid of them by dragging them off the artboard. But yeah, you can get rid of literally everything.
Okay.
And now if I want a call to action button, I can just drag it on there.
Cool.
And if I use my text tool and I type text and then I just click on whatever, it will change the attributes of that thing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's great, because then it
So
actually shows, like what you were saying in the beginning, that this lesson, albeit boring, is really great in terms of setting up your workspace or scaffolding, if you like, so that going forward you are consistent with your styling, you're quick to apply different changes, and you can even apply global changes like you showed with the components. You know, if you want to change the color of a button, you can just go to the master and change it. That's really great.
Yeah. Okay, lekker.
Cool.
Any other questions?
No, I think I'm comfortable. I'm curious to get stuck in and try one of the two of the things that you've shown, actually.
Cool.
Thanks,
So Shane. I think maybe we'll do like 2 more goes. Like, I think it'll be cool if we design like a whole homepage, because we'll like go through a whole bunch of things as we go. Yeah. And then I don't know if we'll be able to do it in one go, but so we'll do that, and then we'll go through looking just very briefly at what prototyping is and how it works, and then how to share assets so that like developers can actually get CSS code and stuff from our project. But yeah, cool. Great. We'll do that in the future ones. Rad.
Thanks, Shane. Looking forward.
Okay. Cheers, man.
Cheers, bro.